Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire and the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. She is an executive resume writer, Ms. Amy Adler. How you doing today, Amy?
I am doing great. Hello, and thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Hey, it is my pleasure to have you on here. I'm kind of interested to see what kind of details you have for us about writing resumes and everything.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's something that people don't think about until they need a resume, until they're in the throes of job search. So I am excited to share what I have learned over many years of doing this with your audience.
Awesome. So the number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is Amy Adler?
Well, I am a certified master resume writer and certified executive resume master, which means I have been vetted by a panel of my, well, I won't say peers because they're some of the best in the industry that there is, to say that I have the skills and the expertise to do what I do on behalf of job seekers. My earliest career was in book publishing. So that plus an MBA led me to become a resume writer, which was really a perfect alignment of those two different skill sets. So I've been writing resumes now for about 16 years, and I have the privilege of working with some of the most remarkable people. They're just incredible, and they're the fact that I have this incredible privilege to tell their stories and the incredible trust that these people place in me just makes me work all that much harder on their behalf, because I know I am supposed to be invisible to their audience. So giving them the platform they deserve is truly my privilege.
Awesome. So what type of skills did you learn from going from a book editor to where you are now writing resumes? Like, what kind of skills transferred?
So that's a really good question. So no one ever says when they're a little kid, I want to grow up to be a resume writer. But 11-year-old me wanted a job where I could read books all day. I didn't know there was a job where you could read books all day, but I discovered this when I was in college. And I went into book publishing as sort of my first love. I never wanted to write a book, although, as I think we just discussed a little bit ago, I did write a book, but that wasn't my goal. I didn't want to be a writer. I wanted to make other people's work better. And I think that bore out over time. So I was the one with the red pencil back when there were red pencils. And we were, of course, at that time moving into digital publishing, but really there was a red pencil. And I wanted to make other people's work better. And I worked in academic publishing, which was a perfect a place for me to help other people showcase what they did best. Anyway, fast forward, I did an MBA. And I wanted to move into the business side of things, but I kind of couldn't pull myself away from working with authors and, well, in this case, clients, but working with individuals on what made them who they are. And when I discovered that resume writing was a thing, and I had the opportunity to work just on a sort of ad hoc basis with a friend of mine, it wasn't even I didn't even know it was a business, but worked with a friend of mine, and she got this interview and she got the job, and it was really exciting. I thought, hey, there's something to this. So when I was sort of dipping my toe back into the editorial world after being out of it for some time, I thought, this is great. I get to do this thing in which I get to work with really closely with people, and it's such a deep connection that I get the privilege of having. And then I decided, well, I had to decide, where do I want to focus? What do I want to do? How do I want to show up for people? And because of the background that I had with business and with editorial, I started just homing in on working with executives. And these are my people. I love working with individuals with complex backgrounds, with deep histories, who are accustomed to doing big things, but don't know how to tell their own stories. They just don't have that skill set. And why would they? Because they're too busy doing the thing they do every day. So I have worked with students as young as high school, and they're loads of fun. And I'm so grateful for the chance to help them get where they need to go, whether it's college or scholarships or what, graduate school, whatever it might be. But my first love truly is with resume writing, with respect to resume writing, is working with people in mid to late careers who have pretty senior titles, because they have just so much to offer. And I'm so invested in telling their story the way it should be told, and not necessarily the way they think it should be told, which I promise you, almost down to a person, is, well, anybody in this job would just do it this way. And I promise you that is just not the case. I don't think it's the case for people earlier in their careers either. I just happen to have this special sort of focus in which I get to do this for senior level players.
Awesome. So what's the biggest challenges they face then if they're going to be coming to you?
The biggest challenge, well, there's two kinds of challenges. One is the I don't know what I want to do next challenge. And that's a really specific skill set. And I don't always take on those clients myself, and except maybe in a limited way. And I have a huge network of colleagues that I love to share business with, because there's so much out there that we ought to share. But the bigger question that people come to me with is, I'm about to embark on a job search and I don't know how to say anything about myself. And I think the real issue is that most people, probably you, me, anybody, can't see ourselves the way others see us or the way others ought to see us. And I get to be the proxy for their hiring teams, the people who are eventually going to be evaluating them. So if I can be a mirror and of what they bring to the table and a proxy, bring those two things together and add in what I hope is a special sauce of art and science with respect to resume writing, good writing, and then this compelling message that says you really need to talk to this person because they have what it takes, then I have done my job well. And it's super exciting to see people light up when they recognize themselves in every word on the page, but they never thought about putting it that way. So it's 100% truthful. It can't be anything but truthful, but it can illuminate where people do really, really well. And I love that about what I get to do.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You can see your face light up when you talk about it too. Yeah, I can see a lot of people having trouble talking about themselves. I think I've had that problem too in the past, where just opening up about myself, like, because it feels like you're like, look at me, look at me.
Well, can I share a kind of a personal story about just that? So, I have a presence of some sense in the industry. I get to speak at conferences and that sort of thing. But to speak at an industry, so there are resume writing industry conferences. We do this every year. But to speak at one of these conferences, one has to submit a proposal. This is pretty typical probably for any kind of academic spin conference. So I had to submit not only the topic I wanted to talk about at the time, but a short bio about myself for resume writers to read. And I promise you, I sat in front of an empty Word document for 20 minutes before I committed something to the screen. And I was like, well, I just got a taste of my own medicine. And this is a true story. I didn't know what to say that was going to be convincing to somebody who was like me, somebody with similar interests and background, that kind of thing. So I remember that well, and I keep that memory close to my heart when I am trying to help somebody get past exactly that kind of a thing, because they're not even talking to their to resume writing colleagues or their own colleagues. They're trying to convince a whole new audience about why they're the one. So I believe in the power of having somebody ask good questions. So resume writing is certainly about resume writing. There's no doubt that it's about crafting good copy on a page about somebody, but it has to be founded on good questions and good listening skills. So ushering people through that process and being that mirror or that proxy for that other audience is what they need to be drawn out of themselves and to get themselves out of their own way in a lot of ways, so they can speak their truth and say, this is where I was successful, this is what I did well, this is what I ought to be doing moving forward. And to tell that story with prompting, of course, with questions and answers that enable me to then shape that into, a huge business case in many cases, something that might take a handful of minutes or whatever it is to tell the story. It on the page gets maybe 2 to 3 lines. So turning an entire experience into a sharply crafted bullet point, we call them, or accomplishment statement, is the joy of what I get to do.
Nice. So how were you able to overcome that, like that own insecurity of telling your own story?
In that moment,
Yeah.
no, I had a deadline, first of all. And then remembering that these are people who need to know about what I want to say. And I did, in fact, get a chance to do that presentation. I got a spot. And I think the same is true for people who are applying to jobs. The foundational thought that the job seeker, the job seeker, is meant to do whatever this work is. And the message is so completely clear from inside their skull that they should be doing this, that convincing them of that is actually pretty easy. So everything follows from, if you believe you're in the right place and doing the right thing for yourself, and you can convince that, then you can convince the audience that you're trying to appeal to that you can do the right thing for them too. So just getting them past that bit of, concern or fear or frustration or unwillingness to speak about themselves can work wonders, because then the floodgates open and there's so many stories to tell that are purposeful and show with intent that the audience should be listening to them.
Awesome. So what types of service did you provide?
So I'm a resume writer. That is my title. I primarily work with executives, so executive resume writer fits pretty well. But that's not the only thing that I do. I write LinkedIn profiles. So everybody who is in a job search or not should have a LinkedIn profile, because it is truly the world's largest Rolodex. And I don't know if I would say this 100%, but maybe 98.5%, that if you're not on LinkedIn, you're kind of invisible, unless you have a role such that the entire world knows who you are. And I mean like CEOs of major corporations and government officials and that kind of thing. Everyone else, the rest of us, we need this because this is how we're getting found. I write cover letters. I might be the last living human who likes writing cover letters, and I like them to be pithy and thoughtful and intentional about a particular role, and not just, please accept this letter in application for this job. I write executive bios. I build websites, write website copy, do graphics, this whole slew of things that position executives to their audiences effectively.
That's funny you say that about cover letters, because I just cringe every time. I'm like, oh man, can I just write one of these for somebody else?
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think, but I will say, when they are needed, it's crucial to get it right. There's been this switch of late, and there's a thousand reasons why, and not all of them positive, in that the job market is really tight, and as such is really flooded with applications. It's really a buyer's market. So many applications don't even require cover letters anymore. That makes the resume even more important. The notion that you can reserve something for the interview is kind of a fallacy. I really think that we should put it all out there in the resume and let an audience see that this candidate is the right person. If there's an opportunity in a cover letter then to amplify that, or to add emotion or depth to that story, that's really what that is for. But I think maybe in the last 6 months, I think I've seen a downward trend in the availability of slots on the application for cover letters. And I think that's just because there's just not enough time. But one of my favorite jokes is, I guess I now have to say it since I started, is that there are 10 types of people in the world, people who know binary and people who don't. And for fun, I did an associate of science in computer science, and I actually learned to code binary stuff. But That was my COVID project. I did it for fun. But the point is that if there are two types of people in the world, whether they know binary or not, I guess is separate. But there are people who like cover letters and there are people who don't like cover letters. The problem is you don't know who you're going to get. So if there's a space for a cover letter, it better be good, because if they don't read it, you haven't lost anything but time. And if they do read it and it's ChatGPT generated, they're going to know. They're going to know, and you will be taken out of the running because you are not being a thoughtful, bright, engaged human being. You're just allowing the ChatGPT to give the same cover letter to you that it has given to 10 other people who have also gone through the process of uploading that job posting and asking for a cover letter. So you're not being as clever as you think.
How many people are probably using AI to create their resumes and everything?
Oh man, everyone and their cousin. And it's unfortunate because, okay, AI is great for a lot of things. It's really good at math, apparently, unless you ask it strange questions to trip it up. But in the main, it's fast. It's good at math. It's good at sorting things. It's good at picking out themes, that kind of a thing. It's not really great at writing. It's not really great at writing because nobody knows the depth of a human's capability better than a human, whether that's the actual job seeker themselves or me as kind of stepping into their shoes and asking them the things that I need to know so they can present themselves as one human to another human. So I think that people are using ChatGPT for writing in a hoping it's a shortcut. But I think it is diluting exactly who they are and making them look like everybody else, and not using great language necessarily. It's not the greatest tool for capturing someone's voice, I want to say.
Yeah.
It's great at being itself. And the last I checked, AI wasn't looking for a job.
So you can usually probably tell which ones are and which ones aren't.
Well,
Easy? Is it kind of easy?
You know what? I think it might be. I hope that people are not showing me their ChatGPT or whatever the large language model. I don't throw shade at ChatGPT per se, but whatever the large language model is, I don't think people are necessarily showing that to me because they're not really doing it. They're saying, as a senior executive, I know this isn't going to do me justice. I want to find somebody who knows what they're doing and ask them to do it. And given that there's an entire industry, like I said, there's conferences and all sorts of things built around resume writing, I'm going to go find the person who's going to hear me as me and take my story to the next level. I think that in the job search, there's something that ChatGPT can do a really good job with, honestly, is take a look at a job posting and ask questions or come up with questions that might be asked in an interview. It won't be an exhaustive list and it might not 100% overlap with what the audience is going to be asking, but it's a great place to start. And I definitely would recommend that. So I think there are ways that people can use ChatGPT or whatever model effectively without giving themselves away as being anywhere between I don't know, not thinking very clearly about what needs to be done and or lazy, to be honest. So there's this other piece of it, which is so the argument goes, if recruiter sites or job application sites are going to be using AI, why shouldn't I as a job seeker? And this devolution, I think, of thinking comes to like, we're going to have AI applications and AI recipients, and there's not going to be a human being in the conversation at all, and it's going to spit out a candidate and someone's going to get hired that way. Obviously, that's not the case. But I think even more so, it's not the case because humans are doing the hiring. So being a human on the front end is to a candidate's benefit.
Yeah. So what are the best practices in resume writing?
Number one, absolutely number one, maybe number 1 through 5, is know what you want to apply for, what kind of job you are meant to have, and what the next role for you should be. So a resume, this is hyperbolic, of course, but a resume that is good for a dentist or a senior operations executive or a finance leader, any of those would be terrible if the person was applying to be a plumber, right? The overlap would be negligible or non-existent. But let's say there's a senior operations executive, and let's say they run call centers. This is sort of something from my own history. I worked with a whole bunch of people who worked around call centers. They're going to have to know things like phone call time to answer and resolution rate and all these things that have to do with call centers. So building the resume around the goal of the next level of working in a call center or as an operations executive makes sense. So the more somebody can take a handful of, or the universe of job descriptions that are out there, or job postings that are out there, and say, these 5, these are mine. I don't know if I'll apply for these specifically, but these 5 represent the thing I want to do. And then narrowing their resume onto the expectations of those 5 positions will move the needle so far. And it's initiating the conversation before it even starts. So it's somebody saying, here's all the things I've done. Here's where I want to go. I want to be an operations executive in a call center. And that conversation happens before they even have an actual face-to-face, because the job seeker says, I know what I want. And the recruiting team or the hiring team says, oh, I understand why this person's in front of me. And that conversation builds from this affinity that's already there. So the number one people need to know is what they want to do, because their audience has already got in their head the notion that they want to hire somebody who's already done this kind of work or some version of this work before, because it's a buyer's market and they can be really, really specific. And if a job seeker out there is hearing what I'm saying and wondering what that actually means, it means go to the qualifications aspect of the job posting and make sure that you've got them all, because they're not going to take a chance on you, not in this market. Maybe that'll change. But they need to know, for simplicity, for ease, for fast time to hire, for low risk, that the person who is applying has done either exactly what's on that list or a correlate of it. But don't make them think, make them know.
Great advice. So what are a couple ways that someone can stand out on the resume?
So if rules 1 through 5 are know what you want next, rule number 6 is tell your story in the context of the things you did well. So not only what you did, but how successful you were in doing these things. And we call those the bullet points, right? We see what a resume looks like. It has like that paragraph about what they did, and then it has these bullet points. So just as in every interview anybody's ever had, or in every annual review, we have to be able to tell the story of the successes. And they are typically in the format of CAR statements. That's the acronym we use. There's other ways of doing it, but it's challenge, action, and result. So foundationally, what were you facing, and kind of the context? So maybe CCAR. So what was the context and the challenge? What was the situation? What action did you take? And what was the result? So that result better be something worth telling a story about. You don't want to hang out your dirty laundry. But if you can do this, you not only show them that you've done a great job, but you get to talk about all of the keywords and all of the successes and the contextual uses of those keywords that you would expect to find in a resume that is going to be highly searchable on some database. And then when somebody finds you for the things that you're talking about, maybe it's the KPIs or the phone system or whatever, in the case that I was just talking about, maybe it's all those things. And then when they get to your resume, they're going to say, wow, this person really knows what they're doing. They've done this before. They understand my problem, and they've solved problems like the ones I typically experience. And that is gold right there. They should, both sides should see in this candidate, whether it's the person applying themselves or somebody evaluating them, that they are the right person, because they have all of these characteristics and experiences that the hiring team is demanding.
Nice. Should someone tailor the resume for each job posting, and how would they go about doing that?
So it's a really fair question, especially because I just said a few minutes ago, imagine you have a basket of 5 job postings that look like you, and they're all mostly the same. So if you get that far down the path that your resume could apply to any one of those 5, you're going to know 2 things. One is that the job posting, the 5 that you have, are representative of other ones that will come along. So you don't, if you miss those 5 because of timing or whatever, you know other ones are going to happen. So this job exists, and it exists in sufficient quantity. So if you're tailoring your resume to those that you know about, the tailoring or the tweaking on the far end is going to take you very little time. If it takes you more than a handful of minutes, really look at the position you're applying for and consider whether it's still the thing you want to do, that you've been building your resume around for the last however many rounds of edits you've been making. So maybe you have to shape your resume a little differently for this role, because of course every job is going to be different. Maybe you have to move something forward or reframe something with a slightly different terminology or language. But if it takes you more than a handful of minutes, maybe you're looking in the wrong place, or maybe you've changed your mind and now your heart is looking to be fulfilled in another way with a different set of roles. But the resume then has to be completely revised because you wrote it for a purpose that is no longer serving.
Great advice. What are your recommendations for people and their social media accounts?
Well, LinkedIn have to have a LinkedIn account. There's no question that everybody, college kids on up, and maybe even high schoolers on up, will need a LinkedIn profile to record their employment and make them findable, and connect with, enable them to connect with other people who are either like them or the people they need to know as they move in their job search. As for the other social media platforms, people can do as they may. I will just say that social media has a long shelf life. And somebody who is in a job search might want to go through their social media history and selectively take apart what they've put in there if they think it won't serve the purpose of getting hired. So the obvious one is for the college kids out there. Photos that you think might not be appropriate in a professional sense. Know that your audience is going to be searching for you and they'll find you. I mean, I search people out to figure out kind of what their story is. So you can be sure that somebody has a greater stake in the game is going to be doing that research too. For people who are older, who have sort of longer careers and deeper history, know whatever you put out there, whether it's things that we don't discuss in, around the dinner table or something else, meaning sort of religion, politics, whatever it is. If you can't own it, don't put it out on there on any social media, because somebody will find it, and you can be sure that people are going to have similar opinions to you and differing opinions, and that might affect them. But if your stance is so strong that if it came up with an interview, you could defend it and potentially not match up with the job because of it, and you're sticking to those principles, then go ahead and leave it. If you think that it might be something controversial that would maybe not encourage somebody to hire you, then maybe this is time to clean up your social media spaces as well.
What are your recommendations for tailoring like LinkedIn to a LinkedIn profile?
So LinkedIn is well, you can change it. There's no question that somebody could change their LinkedIn profile, but I don't think there's as much opportunity to change it as there is with respect to shaping a second resume that is a derivative of sort of your first one. So capturing who you are and what you do well and what you stand for on LinkedIn in a broader sense. There are plenty of ways to do this. It's slightly, it might confuse an audience who is not expecting you to, I don't know, say you're an operations executive in a call center and you love skydiving, but it might be a point to talk about. So if you run a skydiving club or something, or you have a small business in renting out skydiving equipment, I guess I'm making this up. I don't know anybody who does this. I'm not talking about anybody. But if you can own that and you can make the connection or fortify your position, let's say, to somebody who's going to be looking for you, you can do that. You can do that. Generally speaking, people have one goal and one career path in their or at least one career goal, one career strategy, maybe a winding path in their LinkedIn profiles, in a way that a resume would be super tightly tailored to a particular role, but maybe somebody has different versions of that resume if they're going to be veering off a little bit into another direction on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. You already mentioned that to use Chat GPT to prepare for interviews. What are some other ways somebody can prepare for an interview?
So I think the first thing is look at the job posting itself. They're giving away the end game. They are saying these are the requirements 100% have to have, which of course you've already made because you now have the interview, and these are the nice to haves. So decide for yourself which of the nice to haves you've already fulfilled and what else you need to justify. There's going to be that's just on the hardcore facts of the job. But in terms of figuring out what else you need to know about the company, anything that you can find out on the internet is going to be good to know. And you can use ChatGPT for something like this. Tell me about company X. You can use Google to tell me about company X. Don't let your lack of research be a reason your audience rejects you, your future hiring team rejects you. If you can figure stuff out from the website, from their annual reports, from news media, from social media, what this company is about, the more information you come in with, and the more let's say highly specific your questions are that cannot be answered by a quick Google search, the more likely your audience is going to see that you have done all of this thinking and all of this research that shows your commitment to what you are doing. Something else you can do, by the way, is start to look out for people who are working in that company or in that division or in that team or whatever it is, and make connections with them. I wouldn't say beat their doors down because that's not going to help you, but getting a broader network of people who are already within that company is something that recruiters who have the recruiter app within LinkedIn, they can tell. And actually casual users honestly can tell too. They can look at your profile and learn from your connections, the extent to which you're connected with people in the target organization. And that speaks well of you too, because you're saying, I'm trying to integrate myself. I'm amassing a network inside this organization. And if it makes sense to have a casual conversation with somebody who might work for this organization to get some insider viewpoints, that can really, really help as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. How important do you think like networking is for like these college students getting ready to come out to the workforce?
For college kids, well, I think it's true for anybody, but for college kids specifically, college kids have one fantastic advantage, now that I'm thinking of it, that the rest of us elder folks don't necessarily have. And that is they are built to learn, and the audience knows that they don't have the same sort of professional context or existing professional network that more experienced professionals are likely to have. So a college kid calling up or emailing or whatever somebody in a company to say, I don't know anything about what you do and I want to learn about what you do, is more endearing and potentially time consuming, but more endearing than somebody who is just spitballing it because they don't know what else to do in their job search and they're just throwing it out there. So a college kid who wants to meet a person who does the job they eventually hope to have is honoring that person, that target, with their curiosity and their interest and their potential goal setting. They're not trying to take that person's job. They're nowhere near ready for that, but they're trying to figure out, where do I fit? And it is a true privilege, I think, to be asked by somebody with less experience, new to the market, how did you get there? What did you do? What was your path like? It's more of an honor than it is an imposition. At least I think that, and I hope that people who have walked a hard path will open their hearts to somebody who is trying to find their way forward. So I think networking is still really important, especially for the younger set, because they don't have the context yet for really any any understanding of what a company does or how it actually works, and the person they're asking has that information, and there's no because the power dynamic is what it is. I think it's a real honor to be asked that kind of a question.
Wow, that just opened my eyes up a little bit. Like thinking about that, it's like, man, that was more of an honor. Not you don't have to look at it as somebody trying to come take your job because they're nowhere ready.
They're nowhere
But
ready.
how many college students are actually doing that though? Like, hey, I want to eventually do this job. I should probably go talk to somebody and be vulnerable, and with the chance of them saying no.
Well, there is that chance, and that vulnerability is huge, right? But I think also that, and this is true for anybody in a networking sort of exploration, is to start with people you know well, and maybe not in the thing that you want to do. Maybe this is just the first step. Maybe your cousin, who's like 2 years or 3 years older than you, just got a job somewhere, and you want to call them up and go, because you've known them your whole life, and talking to your cousin's not such a big deal, or your brother or your sister or whatever. But call them up and say, I just want to learn about what you do. I'm new to the process. I don't I don't have a lot of foundation for this, but wow, you just got a great job with XYZ company. How'd it go? How'd you get it? What was that like for you? And you start to build this confidence, because now this person, of course, is, they love you already, and they know you, and they're not going to shut you down. But in the in a more mature sense, maybe it's your kids, like your kids on a soccer team, and you see the parent every week at the games, and they work for company ABC, and you're like, oh man, I've been looking into that company for so long, and I know that they make this great whatever, and they do this whatever. What's your role in that? And they might say, oh, I'm in HR, but so I don't make the product, but I've been talking to this guy in my company who's on the product team, and he's terrific. I'll be happy to connect you, something like that. Or they might say, I'm not on the product team, but I'm on marketing. So I'm not building the product, but I have to think about whatever aspect of this. And I still know, I know who you need to talk to. So those kinds of conversations are sort of off the cuff and light. But it's more like, who can you introduce me to if it's not you? And if it is that person, yeah, I'm on the product team. I get to build whatever. But yeah, let's find a time to talk. And then you exchange contact information, and you call, and, or email, you set up an appointment, and then you take 15 minutes of their time and find out who else you need to talk to. So it's really the same thing as that college kid that we were, imagining, just in a different context, because obviously somebody who's more mature in their profession is going to have other things to say, and have a background. So it's trying to figure out who the right person is. And then maybe it's company, whatever, is not hiring in this particular group, but they have a friend they know from a professional society. Oh, you should talk to, Jane, because she knows something about her company, about what's going on over there. And it just becomes this expansive connection after connection after connection. That's really helpful.
Yeah. You have two podcasts, the Job Search podcast and Amy Adler's How I Hire podcast. What led you to start them?
I wanted to test my mettle. I mean, I'm not a professional podcaster. I know how much goes into the back end, and I'm honored to be part of someone else's process at this point. So the Job Search podcast, these are both still live, so people can listen. It's about 70 episodes, kind of bite-sized job search tips or sort of thought processes. I wanted them to be bite-sized. I wanted them to be digestible, kind of commute length, if you will. So, and very topical, very focused. I wanted people to have kind of a different perspective, not just the standard, this is how you go about a job search, but the things that I think about that are not necessarily on the beaten path. So if people want to listen on their subway ride or car ride or whatever, that they're about, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes a piece. So people can listen to that. How I Hire is different. That is, I should say that podcast became the basis for a book called Courageous Career Change. and it's on Amazon, so people can find that. But How I Hire is a little different. That's an interview-based podcast, still in its early stages, in which, well, the premise of it was, I'm a resume writer. I am not a recruiter. I'm not a hiring manager. I have to listen to people who know what they are doing. And I really make that effort. I follow on LinkedIn people I think who have good or giving good advice about how they do what they do, but I wanted to know more. So I thought, what if I could interview people who are doing the hiring? So I have invited a handful of people so far who are either hiring execs or recruiters, and asked them to tell me what they do, how they do it, what makes them compels them to hire somebody over somebody else, or what stories they have to tell, because these are the sources of truth in this industry. They are saying, this is what I do. This is how I go about filling my team and finding the right people. So again, I wouldn't say that I have your skill in podcasting and interviewing, and I appreciate that you do so much. But it was really fun, and it has been really fun to ask the questions I always wanted to ask of people who are doing this every day.
That's an interesting premise right there. So you get a lot of inside knowledge, and then you get to share it with everybody, because there's a lot of people that don't know exactly what they're looking for.
You mean job seekers?
Yeah,
Well, that's entirely true.
Like what the actual hiring managers and recruiters are actually looking for.
Right. And I think it's going to differ from person to person to person in terms of, every hiring team is going to have their own specific requirements. Every company is going to have its own specific requirements. But I thought, if I don't know the answer to this question, I should ask people who do know the answer to this question. And it just followed from there.
I like that premise. What's been the most rewarding part about podcasting and the most challenging part?
Oh man. I love talking to people. I get to talk to people all day long, every day, learn what they do. This is just another way to find out what people are about, and what makes them tick, and what interests them, and what challenges them in the hiring process. So that's been super rewarding. But I mean, the whole thing, I hope you didn't experience this, but to keep the conversation going in a meaningful way and let people own the floor. So giving them the chance to direct the conversation while I'm slowly guiding it, right? To make sure that we're still on topic, and that we're getting the audience the kinds of data points that they really need to hear. As far as the job search podcast, I was talking to myself. That was me. I won't say lecturing, but I guess kind of lecturing on what I thought was important. So that was, well, I think in both cases, it's tough to be a performer when you're not a performer. But I just treated it like any other conversation of the type that I have all day long with people who I think are fascinating. And I think if I just think of that as my North Star, and I get to interview people who are super, super deep into their careers and very knowledgeable and interesting and fun and funny, the conversations were so natural after that. I love it.
I think that's my favorite part too, is getting to talk with people and just hearing their story, because everybody's got a great story.
So true.
You mentioned that you wrote a book. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So, Courageous Career Change: Fearlessly Earn the Executive Role You Deserve. I realized very early on in resume writing, and I'm in year 16 now, so this is a while ago, that the biggest thing across the board that people were facing in job search is fear. And I didn't appreciate that in the very beginning, because I had my own set of concerns. I mean, I still do. I want to make sure I'm delivering exactly what people need. But I was new to this, right? So of course I was a little bit more on edge about that. When I stepped back and realized that people were making choices about their job search, about their what job to apply for, what jobs to take, in so many ways based on fear as a motivator, that really set me off in a direction of wanting to help people combat that and look at their job search process help them recognize that they're operating from a position of being afraid, and legitimize that. Like, I mean, I don't have to legitimize that they're feeling what they're feeling, but acknowledge it and honor it, and help them get through it to the point where they are doing constructive work rather than spinning their wheels in fear, and helping them get past these barriers to the point where they're doing, making concrete steps, taking concrete steps forward to focus on, rather than letting the jitters get in their way.
Yeah. What's your number one recommendation for people that might be experiencing a little bit of fear?
Call me. That's the number one. Even if people don't hire me, my phone is always on, and I really stand by this. I don't want people to ever feel like they're alone. So if they're stuck, please, absolutely, please call me. And there's no pitch involved in that. It's just that I know what it's like, and because I do it every day, so I want to be able to help people. But if people are concerned in a concrete way and they don't want to talk to anybody, the number one thing they can do is figure out what their magic is, what the thing is that they do that delights their hiring teams or their current boss or their future boss. And it's hard to do that when, I think, in the main, people who, at least people I come across, are super humble. So it's okay to own the things you do well. And if you can own the things you do well and care very much about where you want to do that next, that can triangulate very nicely into the kinds of roles that you'd be looking for on a job board or on LinkedIn or whatever it might be, and then enable you to tell those exact stories that are just as impressive to somebody else as they are to you. Enable you to tell them so that it convinces them that you're the right person. So if you think you're the right person because you've done this introspection and done this concrete exercise of figuring out what your audience is likely to be looking for, and doing that matchup, if you can do that, your audience will devour that information. They're waiting for you to show up at their door, because I promise you, and unless you're a recruiter or maybe an HR person, most people's jobs are not hiring people. They're getting stuff done. And the sooner they can hire you because you're the right person, the sooner they can get back to whatever they're supposed to be doing. So you've made it easy for them by showing up with your whole self in the best possible way.
Great advice. How can people get a hold of you?
They can visit me on LinkedIn. My handle is Amy L. Adler. That's AMYLADLER. Or they can go to my website, which is fivestrengths.com. That's FIVESTRENGTHS.com. And they can call me too. My number's everywhere.
Awesome. I'll definitely put all them in the show notes too for everybody. Is there anything we haven't talked about or haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I think I'd like to just reiterate that any given job seeker is probably way better than they think they are at what they do. And to put what you do in context and to demonstrate how good you are in all of the obstacles that you've overcome on behalf of your company or companies historically, that's the magic of resume writing. That is what your audience needs to hear. So please own that. Please own that in the context of your job search and in the context of your own sort of personal psyche, because you matter, because you're good at it, and your audience will want to see your confidence in the amazing things that you do.
I love it. Final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity? And this could be in the context of, hey, they didn't get that one job.
Right. It might be trite, but it really does only take one application, one job offer, the matchup between the two. So quantity is not the name of the game. It's quality. Applying endlessly for thousands of jobs because you can click the easy apply or whatever it is not the path to overcoming the adversity that is a really tough job market. That, by the way, goes beyond you as an individual. The job market didn't ask your opinion. You're just caught up in it. So if you can be really, really focused and get more interviews per application, then you're doing the right thing. So applying for 1,000 jobs, you're only going to be right for a handful of them. So only apply for the handful that you are right for, and that will turn the temperature down on the whole thing. It'll make it feel better, and you'll have your evenings back because you're not going to be applying for jobs you're just not right for.
Awesome advice. Well, Amy, it's been a pleasure having you on here, and I definitely got some great insight from you on resume building and probably updating my own LinkedIn account.
All right. It's been delightful to chat with you. Thank you for your questions. I am so glad to have this opportunity.
It was my pleasure. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.